My name is Lily, and that year I was 33 years old. In the faint reflection of the train window, I could barely recognize the woman staring back at me. My brown hair was tangled in wild dark circles sunken deep beneath empty eyes that seemed drained of all strength. The smile I once took pride in was now just a distant memory no longer appearing on that hollow face. The old worn suitcase beside me was the only thing I carried after 9 long years of a marriage that was supposed to be my safe harbor. I gripped the handle gently, my knuckles white. It wasn't heavy enough to make me lean, but the weight in my chest felt like the whole sky was pressing down. It was the crushing weight of days spent belittled, controlled, stripped of the pieces of self-worth I once cherished. Over the station's noisy backdrop, a cold, automated voice announced, "Train number 307 is arriving at platform 3. I didn't need to hear the destination. I knew exactly where I was headed. A small town where I was born, where my mother Evelyn still waited for me in the cozy wooden house by the old pine trees. My mind echoed with the last cruel words of Mark, the man I once thought was everything. "Lily, you'll never be strong enough to do anything on your own. You're only good at chasing silly dreams, and that's why I have to make all the decisions for you." He spoke in that calm, measured tone, the kind outsiders might mistake for concern or care. But to me, every word was like an invisible chain tightening around my mind, making me believe I was truly helpless. I had swallowed my tears, suppressed my anger, and constantly told myself, let it go for the family. Yet that day, hearing him repeat those words with such smugness, something inside me snapped. Or perhaps it was finally freed. I didn't argue, didn't cry. I simply turned away in silence. I walked into the bedroom and pulled out the suitcase I had secretly packed months ago. Mark didn't follow. Maybe he thought I'd come back like every other time, sulking for a while before inevitably apologizing. Or perhaps he simply didn't care anymore. On the cold wooden bench at the station, I watched people rush by. Families walked hand in hand. Couples chatted happily, and busy men with phones pressed to their ears scrolled furiously on tablets. Everyone seemed to have a destination, a purpose. And me, I felt like a blank page, a notebook never written in. The thought made my lips curl in bitter irony. A notebook. How long had it been since I last wrote 5 years 6? Mark always said it was childish, a waste of time. And somewhere along the way, I let the words inside me fade into silence. I placed a trembling hand over my chest, feeling my heart beat fast and uncertain. Where was I going? What was I searching for? I didn't really know. I only knew I couldn't stay in that suffocating place another second. The train began to slow down, the screech of metal on metal cutting through me like a blade. I stood up, clutching the suitcase handle tight. This time I didn't look back. "You'll be okay, Mom," I whispered to myself, clinging to the fragile hope that beyond these tracks was the beginning of a different Lily, the Lily I once loved, once was proud of, before she was buried under words that froze her heart. I pulled the suitcase closer and sat back down on the bench, which was cold and damp with early morning dew. The train hadn't arrived yet. The station's pale yellow light spilled across the stained concrete floor, making the scene feel even lonelier. Suddenly, a cold breeze swept through, making me shiver. I bent down to pick up the sandwich wrapper that had slipped from my hand when a man's voice spoke behind me, gentle and warm. "Let me help you." I turned. In front of me stood a man about my age, his slightly curly brown hair falling across his forehead. Thin framed glasses catching the station lights. His eyes, for reasons I couldn't explain, softened something inside me, like hearing a familiar melody I couldn't quite name. "Thank you, but that's not necessary," I said quietly, my voice so unfamiliar even to me. For years, Mark had mocked me for speaking too loud, laughing too hard, and gradually I had learned to lower my voice to suppress my feelings. He bent down, picked up the wrapper, dropped it in a nearby trash can, and turned back with a gentle smile. A smile so kind and sincere it unsettled me. "Lily? Right, Lily Morgan." My eyes widened. How did he know my name? I hesitated, then nodded, studying his face more closely. There was something familiar about him. "I'm Sam Miller. We went to high school together in Cedar Creek." Remember? That name was like a key unlocking a door to my memories. Sam Miller. The skinny boy with oversized glasses who always clutched his books to his chest. Sitting at the back of the class, the old image flooded back the school's narrow hallways with rusty lockers. The laughter of classmates who shoved Sam scattering his papers, and me, the girl who knelt down to help him gather them, glimpsing his poems about lonely stars in the night sky. Sam Miller. I repeated the name as if to remind myself this wasn't a dream. "Of course I remember you. You wrote poetry?" Sam's eyes softened even more. "And I remember you wrote the most wonderful stories. Those notebooks of yours covered with flowers and birds. I even remember how you drew borders around the pages." Hearing him say that made my heart ache. How long had it been since I'd written anything just for me? I turned away, hiding the flicker of emotion. That was so long ago. Not that long, Sam said, his voice steady as if he wanted me to believe it. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a worn yellow pencil, its tip dulled. I stared at it, hardly able to believe my eyes. Along its side, the faded slanted words still read, "The best stories begin with courage." You kept it. My voice caught in my throat. Yeah, you gave it to me that day in the hallway when they tore up my poem. You didn't just help me pick up the pieces, you handed me this pencil and told me it would give me the courage to keep writing. And you were right, it did. Sam opened the backpack beside him and took out a hardcover book with a dark blue cover. The title, The Paper Constellations, was printed in shimmering silver letters. Beneath it was the name Benjamin Harper. I published my first book 10 years ago, Sam said, handing the book to me. This is my third collection. I held the book, my hand trembling with emotion. On the first page, the dedication made my voice catch. For Lily, the one who gave me the pencil that started every story. I looked up at Sam. He stood there, his face calm yet sincere. It had been so long since anyone reminded me I could bring something good into the world. The loudspeaker announced my train's arrival at the station. I glanced at the book, then at the pencil in Sam's hand. A strange feeling crept into my heart, as if I was finally glimpsing a part of myself lost amid the harsh words and quiet resignation. Sam held out the pencil to me. I think it's time it went back to its true owner. I shook my head, smiling softly, tears shimmering in my eyes. No, Sam, it helped you find your voice. Keep it. It still has more stories to tell with you. The train stopped at the platform. I gripped the book tightly. Thank you for remembering and for reminding me. Sam's eyes held a quiet hope. Next time, I'd love to read something written by you. I stepped onto the train, glancing back at Sam one last time before the doors closed. In that moment, I saw the look of trust in his eyes. The look I had longed to see for so many years. The train began to pull out of the station, carrying me along with the screech of metal wheels, grinding on the tracks like it was sanding down wounds not yet healed. I sat in silence, pressing my forehead against the fogged window pane. My gaze drifted to the now empty platform, but in my heart lingered the image of Sam, tall and slender, with his gentle smile and warm eyes that seemed to remind me I had worth, that I had once been a beautiful memory to someone. The announcement of the next stop pulled me back to the present. I lowered my gaze, my hand lightly brushing over the cool hard cover of the book Sam had given me. Amid the swirl of thoughts, I heard slow footsteps approaching. After a moment, a voice spoke. I'm sorry if I'm disturbing you, but I forgot to give you this. I turned. It was Sam. I thought I had left him at the station, but he had boarded the train too. Or rather, this train was also taking him home to visit his parents. He pulled from his coat pocket a plain brown leather notebook, its edges stitched with fine thread. The train's lights shone on the cover, giving it a simple yet captivating look. He held it out to me, his voice low and sincere. This is a small gift, not because I feel I owe you anything, but because I believe you should start writing again. I stared at the notebook, my heart racing. How long had it been since I felt this, a chance given freely with no strings, no hidden motives? I took the notebook, my fingers tracing the soft leather cover, feeling as though every thread whispered an invitation to begin again. Why do you think I should write again? I asked, my voice rough with emotion. Sam tilted his head slightly, his eyes seeming to see through the tired shell I had worn for so long. Because I used to read your short stories in our school magazine, and every time I did, I thought if one day I'm brave enough, I'll write like she does. Someone who writes words like that never truly loses their inner voice, Lily. It's just waiting to be heard again. I gripped the notebook, not daring to open it. Just looking at it made my heart ache, the pain of someone who had given up what they loved most because of doubt and years of denying themselves. Sam seemed to understand. He said nothing more, just smiled and gave me space for my thoughts. After a while, he said gently, "If it feels right when you're ready, right?" The train glided past silver-dusted fields and dark rows of trees against the night sky. I sat still, my hand lightly brushing over the notebook, my heart heavy yet strangely relieved. The thought of writing again frightened me, but it also sparked a small flame that warmed the cold corners of my soul after so many years. With the station coming into view, Sam got to his feet, adjusting his backpack strap. He turned his gaze kind but steady. "This is where I get off. Wishing you a beautiful journey, Lily." I looked up at him, and a true smile found its way to my lips, unforced and long forgotten. "Thank you, Sam, for everything." He simply nodded, then stepped out of the train, disappearing into the mist of the small station platform. I sat there with the leather notebook in my hands, my heart stirring with a thought I hadn't dared to feel in so long. Maybe I wouldn't run from myself anymore. The train came to a stop in the small town I once called home. The night was deep, the sparse streetlights casting shadows down empty streets, the wind whispering through the bare trees. I rolled my suitcase along the rough road, each step carrying the weight of the years I was leaving behind. My mother's wooden house appeared around the bend, the same small porch with the bougainvillea vines now withered by winter, the same white-painted door with peeling edges from time. Warm yellow light spilled from the window, easing my heart. For a moment, I stayed still on the steps, letting the cold country night air fill my lungs. How many years had it been since I stood here not as a visitor out of obligation, but as someone truly returning? The creak of the door broke my thoughts. My mother Evelyn stood there, her soft silver hair falling over her thin shoulders, her face still radiant with the warmth of a mother who always welcomed her child with all her love. "Lily, you're here!" Before I could say a word, she wrapped her arms tightly around me as if afraid I might vanish before her eyes. The warmth of her embrace began to melt the ice within me. "I'm home, Mom." My voice trembled, tears falling onto her shoulder, unstoppable. She led me inside. The faint scent of cinnamon filled the familiar space, blending with the aroma of the baked goods she always made in winter. The old armchair, the worn wool rug, the slow-ticking wall clock. Nothing had changed, as if waiting for me to return and complete the unfinished picture of memory. After I had washed up and eaten a little of the soup she had warmed, she pointed to my old bedroom. "Get some rest. Tomorrow morning we'll go to the market like we used to." Without a word, I entered the familiar room, my heart heavy with memories. Moonlight streamed through the hand-embroidered curtains, bathing the space in soft silver. I sat on the wooden bed, my hand tracing the little carvings I had once scratched in my youth. It all felt like a dream I had long forgotten, now returned with heartbreaking clarity. The leather notebook Sam had given me still lay in my suitcase. I pulled it out, gazing at it for a long while. My hands ached to hold a pen again, longing to let the words speak my heart. I switched on the desk lamp, sat down, and with trembling hands, opened the notebook. The crisp white page, the faint scent of new leather, brought a hush to my soul. I picked up a pen, its tip touched the paper, and I hesitated a moment. But then the words, the sentences that had been waiting somewhere quietly flowed out. Today, I came home with a suitcase and a heart full of scars. I didn't leave out of hatred, but because I needed to find myself again. In this old room, under the soft glow of the lamp, I write these lines, hoping that each word will guide me through the uncertain days ahead. The first line felt like unlocking a door long sealed in my heart. The memories, the pain, the forgotten dreams spilled out, taking shape on the page. I wrote about the loneliness of a wife left behind, the long nights wondering if I still had worth about my mother's eyes, the station Sam. The old pencil he treasured like a keepsake. I wrote until my hand ached, my eyes stung. Outside, the wind howled through the pines, in tune with the beat of my heart. The beat of someone coming back to life after breaking apart. When I set the pen down, I gently closed the notebook, resting my hand on its soft, warm cover. The room seemed filled with new breath, no longer as stifling as in the old days. I pulled the worn wool blanket over my shoulders, drifting into sleep with a light heart. The mornings in my hometown gradually became moments I cherished most. As the first sunlight filtered through the curtains, I sat at the small table by the window with a steaming cup of tea, opening the brown leather notebook and letting the pen lead the way. The white pages now began to fill with words poured from the depths of my heart, about youth that had slipped away, about the silent days in a house that once felt like home, about the yearning to find myself again. Sam kept calling often, his voice steady and kind, just as it was that first day we met again. He sent me books, poetry novels, collections of short stories. He said, "I believe you'll find yourself in these." Every time a book arrived, I felt a new strength to pick up the pen. We didn't talk much, didn't make promises, but every call, every message from Sam felt like a small light guiding me back to the passion I thought had died out. I began submitting my short stories and essays to local literary magazines and small websites. The first rejection letter came, and I sat on the porch for a long while watching the rain patter on the old tin roof. But then I remembered what I had once written about the courage to begin about myself, about the days when I was a little girl named Lily who dared to dream in cold school hallways. The second, third, then fourth rejection followed. At first, my heart twisted with each one. But strangely, with each letter, I wrote more and more eagerly, as if the words were my way of proving to myself I was still here, still strong enough to follow what I believed in. Then, one afternoon as I was trimming the bougainvillea vines with Mom, the phone rang. On the other end was the voice of an editor from a literary magazine I had long admired. "We'd like to publish your piece in our upcoming issue. The old porches truly touched our hearts." I remained rooted under the afternoon sun, my heartbeat loud and unsteady. It wasn't a major publication, but for me, it felt like my voice had finally been heard again. Mom looked at me, her gentle smile bringing tears to my eyes. You see, the little girl who once sat on this porch, creating worlds with her imagination, has found her pen again. In the days that followed, I kept writing, kept submitting my work. And even though most responses were still rejections, every piece that was published made me feel stronger. One evening, as I sat rereading my manuscript at the table, the phone rang. The caller ID showed a name I had tried to forget, Mark. I hesitated, then answered. Lily, it's me. His voice was a mix of pleading and exhaustion. I've thought a lot. Come back. We can start over. I know you still need me. I'm still the one who understands you best. I stayed silent, listening to every word. For years, I had longed to hear him speak to me that way, without arrogance, without criticism. But now, hearing it, I felt only a strange sense of relief. Mark, I replied, my voice calmer than ever. You don't understand me. You only understand the version of me you wanted to see. I left to find myself, and I'm on that path now. I'm not coming back. There was silence on the other end. I could hear his heavy sigh, but I wouldn't let my heart grow weak again. I ended the call, and for the first time, my hands didn't tremble as I set the phone down. Outside, the night drifted by peacefully, the stars sparkling, as if watching over me, witnessing each step I took to return to myself. The months after that final call from Mark passed more lightly than I expected. I kept writing, kept sending my work out, and gradually received more positive feedback. Every morning, waking in my old room with sunlight streaming across the wooden floor, my heart felt less heavy. The nightmares of those years under control gave way to gentle dreams of books, words, and smiles I had once forgotten. One early autumn day, as the leaves began to change on the trees around town, Sam called. His voice was still warm, but this time with a hint of hesitation, as if holding back something important. Lily, I thought a lot before calling today, he said, his tone deeper. The university here is looking for someone to teach an introductory creative writing class. I mentioned you during a meeting. They want to meet you. That is if you feel ready. I froze for a few seconds. Me, the woman who had been silent for so many years, who had lost her voice, now invited to help others find theirs. Sam, I don't have a teaching degree. I'm not a professor or a real author. You're exactly right, Lily. He interrupted, his voice steady. You have what students need most: real experience, and the courage to stand up from where you thought you'd fallen. Think about it. That night, I tossed and turned. In the end, as the night breeze whispered outside my window, I knew I didn't want to hide anymore. The meeting with the department chair took place in a room filled with old books and the scent of pine wood. I spoke of my writing journey, of the rejections, of the trembling hand that hit send, of the small joys when something was accepted. The conversation wasn't a formal interview, but like two kindred spirits sharing their love for literature. By the end, I was invited to start a trial course for 8 weeks. The class was small, just 10 students of all ages and backgrounds. There was a shy freshman, a single mom rediscovering an old passion, a retired man holding a pen for the first time. Every story was its own world, and I found I loved this work more than anything. I loved seeing the light in someone's eyes when they found the right words. Loved how people slowly began to trust their own voice. Sam remained by my side, never pushing, never rushing. We met after class sometimes at a small cafe by the lake, sometimes just walking beneath trees, showering us with fallen leaves. There were no promises, no fancy words. It was a grown-up love built on respect and understanding, on scars that had healed but left their mark. One afternoon, as I adjusted my lesson plan by the window, Sam appeared with his familiar smile and a brown envelope. I wanted you to see this, he said, placing it in my hands. Inside was the print of my first book cover, The Suitcase, accepted by a small state publisher after an editor read some of my pieces in a magazine. On the cover, my name, Lily Morgan, appeared simple and dignified below the image of an old suitcase beneath a wide-open sky. I stared at it, emotions welling up. If it weren't for you, he shook his head, his smile as gentle as that first afternoon we met again. No, Lily. If it weren't for you, the one who dared to start over. That night, I sat alone at my desk, holding the cover print, tears falling, before I realized this wasn't just a book. It was proof of my journey back to myself, word by word, page by page. Outside, the rain fell softly, the scent of damp earth mixed with the old wood of my childhood home, and I felt an unexpected peace, ready to face whatever lay ahead. On the evening of the Suitcase book launch, Sam and I sat together in a small corner cafe. Outside, the drizzle sparkled under streetlights like streams of memory being washed clean, making way for something purer. The cafe was quiet, filled only with soft jazz and the aroma of freshly roasted coffee. Sam pulled a small velvet box from his coat pocket, setting it gently on the table. Lily? His voice was warm, but carried a slight tremble I had never heard before. I know you don't want to tie yourself to official promises. I respect that, and I love that about you, the part of you brave enough to say what you want. But I still want to give you this. Not to bind you, but so that whenever you see it, you'll remember I'm here beside you. I opened the box. Inside was a delicate silver chain with a small teardrop-shaped stone clear as his eyes. At that moment, kind, patient, sincere. I looked at the necklace, looked at Sam, and smiled from the depth of my heart. Thank you for always understanding me so well. From that night, we continued our journey together, not bound by vows, but connected by understanding and shared strength. The days passed quietly and simply. Every morning, I sat by the window writing new stories. Sam sometimes stopped by my class offering students encouraging words or an interesting book. 2 years later, Sophia was born, bringing a happiness we had never known. Our little girl with big brown eyes and a smile that seemed to brighten the world. In the small house by the old pines, her laughter seemed to heal all old wounds in my heart. One autumn afternoon, as the sunlight faded beyond the wooden porch, I found Sophia sitting in the corner of my study, holding the old pencil Sam had kept as a treasure for so many years. The pencil was worn down to a small stub, but in her tiny hands, it seemed to fit perfectly. "What are you doing, Sophia?" I asked, unable to hide the emotion in my voice at the sight before me. Sophia looked up, her eyes sparkling like early autumn stars. "I'm writing a story, Mama. A story about a princess with a magic pencil. The pencil helps her save a friend from a bad castle." I sat beside her, watching her scrawl uneven lines across the paper. I felt as if I were looking at myself as a child, little Lily, with her hardback notebook spinning tales with boundless imagination and dreams. Sam stepped in quietly, watching us. He came closer, gently resting a hand on my shoulder. "See you pass that spark to her," he whispered. I squeezed his hand, my heart flooded with a feeling hard to describe. It wasn't loud joy, but a deep peace, the kind that comes to someone who knows they've weathered the storm, and now stands in a home built from each word, each brick, each shared laugh. Outside, the autumn breeze played through the pines, golden leaves falling softly on the porch. I looked out the window silently, grateful for every person and moment that had touched my life, even the pain. Because without it, I wouldn't have this day. The little pencil in Sophia's hand was now a symbol of a journey that continues, of hope, of love that needs no fanfare but endures. And I knew whatever challenges lay ahead, I would stand strong. The power of rediscovery and resilience. Lily's journey is a powerful testament to the human spirit's capacity for resilience and self-rediscovery. Her story reminds us that even when we feel stripped of our identity and purpose by others' words or circumstances, the spark within us never truly dies. It merely waits for the right moment and perhaps the right connection to be rekindled. The most valuable lesson here is that our true worth isn't determined by external validation or the opinions of those who seek to diminish us, but by our own courage to reclaim our voice and pursue what truly ignites our soul. Lily's transformation from a woman silenced by a controlling marriage to a published author and inspiring teacher demonstrates that breaking free from toxic environments, no matter how daunting, is the first crucial step toward building a life of authenticity and joy. Sometimes all it takes is a familiar face, a forgotten passion, or a simple act of kindness to remind us of the strength we